Okay. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Branding
Branding
Beardos
Beardos.
and
Whoop,
our
whoop.
segment, Towkay Talks. Now, today's guest comes from a very unique business, one that is critical to our well-being and survival, but often invisible to us until we need what they do. Now, Kevin Cheng here is the second generation business owner of VV or Vida Verde, a firm that makes safe, natural, or non poisonous alternatives to daily necessities like cleaning solutions, pest control, and mineralization. Now, Kevin is a business management graduate from La Trobe University and is also an intrepid creative with skills in videography, photography, and design. Let's give a very warm welcome to Branding Beardos. Welcome to Kevin.
Whoop, whoop. Woo.
Thank you for having me, guys.
I might have messed up that last line somewhere, but
It's fine. It's fine.
we'll let it run.
We'll let it go, man.
Hey, thanks, Kevin, for being with us. Oh, so Kevin is actually also a client of mine. So this is the first time we get.
Yes.
Well,
Keep pitching the client to come on the show.
but I think one thing that I really enjoy doing this project with Kevin and of course Mr. Cheng and Mrs. Cheng, who are his parents, who are the founders of the business as well, is that they really have a very, very strong feel of what they are doing. Like most of the times you have businesses like, oh, I'm selling, like for example, I'm selling some plants. Oh, are you really passionate about plants? No. Because a lot of people buying plants, so I want to make money. But for them, and for Kevin and his family, they have really bought into this entire
Lifestyle.
it's a lifestyle. Exactly, they've bought into this lifestyle completely. And for me, it's always I always look at it in awe. And when I go for meetings as well, and I listen to Mr. Cheng talking, and I learned a lot, and I see that a lot of it is in Kevin as well when he does something. But Kevin, with all these things happening, right? Where do you see VV now? How much more relevant is the brand today in this moment?
Actually, looking at how the world is now, especially with things like the COVID-19 and 2020 definitely has not been a good year for the world at most of the time. And I think it does play a big part because you see, especially during the pandemic period, you see all these new brands coming out talking about sanitation, talking about hygiene. But it really makes you question like what all these things are. Because for a very long time, like especially in the past few months, you're talking about spraying 70% alcohol on your hands.
Yeah.
The fact is, if you had an open wound, you wouldn't even think about doing that because it hurts and it's bad for your skin, but somehow we have it because that just seems like the obvious way to go. But in reality, there are so many better alternatives to it that people just aren't willing to try. And I think that speaks about the mentality and the mindset of the common man, not just in Singapore but around the world, on how they look at the information that they're receiving, how they look at the alternatives on the market. Most of it is just following as the world goes, but not considering for themselves. But you do have, that's not like putting aside those, like the population of people that do actually think about what they are consuming, what they are using. And that's the kind of people that we want to grow in the world, those that are actually taking their own lives into their own hands. Does that make sense?
So educate us a little bit here. Let's say with hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
Right now we are putting like 70% alcohol on our hands, and I mean my hands have started to peel since like 2 weeks ago. What do you mean by the alternatives, and like actually how are they different or better?
So with hand sanitizers, most of the time you'll see alcohol-based or chemical-based disinfectants, sanitizers. So the most common liquid sanitizer you'll find is alcohol-based. most people would run straight 70% ethanol, straight 70% alcohol, and of course that's very drying on the skin. You have other companies that have been slightly more innovative. They have alcohol based, but at the same time with a moisturizer, a liquid moisturizer inside, so to counteract. So that's what most hospitals, medical professionals use. People that need to do it multiple times a day. But you also have different alternatives that haven't been patented, or not exactly haven't been patented, but unwidely used. Like let's say hypochlorous acid or HOCl. Hypochlorous acid has been around for many years, but it was only made popular by a certain group of people, small group of Americans, but at the same time also the Taiwanese government. In their early fight this year, I think somewhere in early February or late January, when news started to run about the COVID-19, their government already started implementing the use of hypochlorous acid, which they then deemed effective in their fight against the virus. So like hypochlorous acid is basically just a very weak acid, so it actually does not do anything to you, and it's also cytotoxic, so it doesn't damage any human cell or any cell in your body or in your, let's say, child or animal, your pet. So in that sense, that would technically make it the best alternative, because the hypochlorous acid is known to kill bacteria and viruses in some people would consider it on contact, depending on the usage, but definitely within seconds, under a minute or 10 minutes. Because if you read, like, even the way alcohol kills, it kills by dehydration, and you need a certain period of contact time. Yeah. And same thing with soap. That's why you need to sing the happy birthday song multiple times just to wash. And that's also not a confirmed kill, if that makes sense. Yeah, most of it removes the virus from your skin. Some of it does die, but some of it also gets washed down the sink. So yeah, there are
doesn't kill the bacteria. Right.
Yeah.
But why do
some
you
of them
think
do, but not all. Yeah.
why do you think people are still so apprehensive? And we talked about this in the course of the project, about trying to understand why people are still so apprehensive about buying natural products. And I think one of the reasons that we came up with was that possibly that people think of it as that it's not, because of the fact that it's not widely available in supermarkets, and that could be the cause of this perception building. Now, what do you think that we need to do to get people to realize that, hey, you're basically just shoveling chemicals all around your house every single day,
I don't think it's as simple as what can we do on our side, but even, let's say, the community of people within the same cause, looking at healthy, safe, green alternatives, there is, I would say, a division in itself. You have the organic purists, you have the green movement people, you have those that claim to be natural but actually aren't, like, I'm not going to say some big brands with little fine print that says, may not actually be,
Okay.
But so there is a big division, and I think the problem with the division is then it makes you feel like you need to choose sides, even with becoming green. Just like health foods, some people prescribe to veganism, some people prescribe to vegetarianism, some people want the keto diet. There's a division in itself, and that causes a lot of friction. So that in itself really creates like this social barrier.
Right.
But on top of that, you also have like
that was interesting, because you were talking about health foods, and we have a problem with health foods that also surface with all these like cleaning agents and all that, which is like one day someone says this is safe, another day someone says it's not safe. So like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is, or the biggest advice that I will give to people when it comes to something as seemingly confusing as like health foods or natural products, is to do your own research. Don't always listen to someone else. If you want to look on the internet, look at reputable sources. Don't go and look at some blog website about some salty person writing about an incident that they had. That's not gonna work. Do proper research, read journal articles, educate yourself. And that's all it is. Because once you start to educate yourself, you start to know more about the situation of the world, you start to know more about the things in your house.
Yeah.
And naturally you would want to make the change, because
Right.
I don't think people want to live that way once they actually know what it is. And like, I can only from my point of view educate so much as to the person listening wanting to know about it.
I think it's like one of those things. The worst thing is that these people get their hands on these reports, and then they start sending it to their friends or WhatsApp. Hey guys, you got to read this, and you got to believe what I'm saying about the the dangers of using this. And so it's like one unfounded opinion, and one after another. But for me, what's the more interesting thing is like how did you all come about to start this thing? What was the journey, for the family and now you running part of the business? Because everything
niche.
It's not only niche, but the like I was saying earlier, right, to everyone, that there's a real passion. So, but passion always comes from somewhere. So maybe you can share how this journey with no poisons started. Yeah.
Okay. I can say for certain that the passion aspect of it isn't so much directly, it's the need for greener, more natural, safer things. The passion comes from the love of people. Loving the people around you, caring for what society is going to become. And I think that's where it stems, or that's where it starts. So like with my dad, when he first started the parent company before Vida Verde, it was based on the fact that his old home, used to have termites. So when he called the pest controller, at that time I have an older brother. At the time, my older brother was very young. He was still a baby. He was still crawling around like the house. So that means he'll be in contact with everything on the floor, and babies like to put things in their mouths. So when my dad called the pest controller to come and deal with the termite problem, immediately he noticed something, which was the fact that the pest controller took out this jar of brownish orange powder, which is basically arsenic powder. And arsenic in its pure concentration is extremely potent and toxic to humans. So the fact that the pest controller wanted to spray it, dust it around in a baby's room, got my father thinking like, are you mad? Like, are you trying to kill my child like right now? So my dad told him to leave, and then he started to find alternatives to this problem, and that's when he found like the mesh, and that started the whole journey. Because of the love of his child, and then that subsequently moved into the love of the people around him, and then to the people that he interacts with, and now to the world.
That's intensely personal.
That is
right.
That's why the whole the entire DNA of the brand, whether it's like what he was talking about, Thermi Mesh and Vida Verde, it's really about no poisons. Say no to poisons, and everything is natural. And I remember one of the products Kevin picked up and started, just to prove, right? He was sharing that experience, just to show people that it's actually food grade. So, but it's really to let people know as well. I mean, how dangerous everything is, and I also actually started becoming a small customer also, and buying lots of the smell be gone, and stuff like that. But and moving on to the next point that I wanted to ask, like for you, because you're still a rather young man, as compared to myself and Kenneth. We're both old and graying and dying. You're still.
You guys have many years, man. You guys have many years. Fine.
Yeah. But like for you, right? I mean, how was it? taking over part of the business now? Was it something that you always wanted to do, always something that you saw yourself doing, or what was your journey? Because not many people want to take over
family business.
Family business or be part of it also.
Yeah. I think for me personally, it's a combination of a few things, but of course, one of them being the fact that in Singapore now, or actually around the world, jobs can be quite competitive. And not just saying like how the job scene in Singapore is right now, because actually we do have a lot of jobs available. It's just that people aren't willing to take those jobs. So in that sense, it's not competitive. But looking for a job that you're willing to do, that you want to do, then it is competitive. And someone like me, majoring in business with no particular specialization, gives me an advantage to move around, but I have to show my worth a little bit more. So in that sense, going on this, taking this opportunity to work for my parents is kind of like the best option, to play it safe. But on the other hand, talking about passions and whether it's something I wanted to do, I think from a very young age, my dad already ingrained in me what it means to have a passion for something. And especially something like this, where it's been reiterated over the years, like how we shouldn't be, dealing with chemicals, like having that peace of mind when you use things. Those are already part of my, they're already ingrained into my brain. And so I think it just naturally translated into me getting into this field. And I know and I understand how some people will want not to work for their parents because, we grew up believing that we are supposed to find a job that we love so that we can continue working at it. And, we each have our dreams that we want to chase, and we all have our individual passions. So I can understand when people don't want to, but I guess that's where it differs when you get questions about like, don't you feel pressured into working for your parents? And I'm thinking, not really, because then I don't have to go to interviews to to go and sell myself. I don't have to sweet talk or for some people to write the most excellent resume, which I do have, but I wouldn't consider it very nice either. So yeah.
I think it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because like I feel like everyone has their own like flow in life, and the path that they take is very different. So while we're talking to you about this and how you're working for your parents' business, but like your objective is very different. I think it isn't just safety also. I feel like you are actually looking at it from a long-term career perspective. You are gaining experience. Whether you stay on or not is another story, but you will actually learn something valuable, because like it or not, you're pretty close to the sun, especially when it comes to like running the business. So you're going to pick up stuff that you won't know unless you run a business. And now that will be like superb experience that you can take anywhere you want to go. Which brings me to this point about like my question about being I wouldn't say a second generation owner, but like someone who is a second generation working within the family business, and having family and having to sort of split that, home and professional. Like what challenges are like very immediate to you that you face?
I think the immediate thing is reflecting on how many other people in my life have told me, don't get into business with family and stuff. It's one of the most common things you hear about family businesses, or even like working with friends and stuff. But I think where the difference lies is understanding your place at that time, because like you can see that a lot of, let's say, workplace misunderstandings normally come out of a state of ego. The fact that you as a newer person, or you as like the newer member, think that they know better, and because of that, then you start to get into arguments. There isn't a lot of listening, and then becomes a lot of neglect, and sometimes it can get a little bit heated.
Right.
So like for me, I think it has been easier in the sense that we have talked out, like me, my parents, my brother, we have talked out about our individual roles. So that makes it easier for us to navigate around each other and with each other. So that my parents will obviously be still running the business as per normal, but I will take over things like, marketing, a little bit of sales, starting to look into business development. So, and when we implement things, we do things mutually. So we all have to be on the same page, and if we're not, we have to agree to let someone else take the lead. If let's say
Right.
like for the technical sides of things, my dad has most of the knowledge. So I wouldn't want to argue with him on a certain thing unless I know that I have done my research and have known more about that particular subject. Then I can bring it up to him. Apart from that, I will normally rely on his expertise.
Nice.
Then if it comes to execution, I would take that expertise and formulate it into a plan or propose it. And if let's say someone doesn't quite agree, we'll talk it out, try to understand where each party is coming from, and then we will move forward with whatever seems to be the most appropriate. Yeah. So actually, it's not that difficult, I think.
But for
I
you,
think
surely there are challenges. I mean, for any family business, because like my family also, we have a business, and I don't mention exactly which family member, but I always told my uncles if I were to get involved, then I might want to fire people, and some of those people might be very close to me that I need to fire because it's not healthy for the business, and at the same time also they are aware that um, the succession of the business means it might not pass on to someone that we're related to. So for you, right? I mean, surely there are challenges, but what has been some of the biggest challenges that you've had, working as part of a family setup, and how did you manage to overcome those areas?
Um, well, I think one of the biggest things are in communication. So my family can be relatively conservative. So speaking our mind doesn't always come first. Normally it's sit in silence, listen for a bit. If you need to say something, you say something, and then you walk away from the meeting. And that isn't helpful because then
wow.
you'll be
Okay.
like really confused at what's going on. You don't know
Yeah.
everyone's footing. So one of the things that because I am, even though I am introverted, I also very um, not carefully, but I really emphasize a lot on communication because as someone that doesn't speak a lot, I need to make sure that when I speak, I'm clear. I need to make sure when other people speak to me, I understand them fully. So I don't want to be in a point where we misunderstand each other based on something that we said. So with them especially, I told them that if there is anything, you need to say it out. When we're in meetings, you can't just keep quiet, talk. Just say it. If you're not happy with the idea, say it. If you want to do something else, say it. But don't keep it to yourselves, because if we can talk about it, maybe we'll come up with something better. But if we don't, then we walk away divided in opinions, divided in our direction. And that creates more problems down the road. And especially because when we come home, in the home itself, we don't talk too much about work unless it's really necessary. And that creates a bit of a problem because when you have like 4 different people moving around at different times, you cannot find a time where everybody is there. And conference calls aren't always the best thing because you don't get to see facial expressions. You can't call anyone out if you know that they're thinking about something but they're not saying it. So you can't do that over the phone. So it becomes difficult. So every time we have like even with a voice call or anything, I always emphasize, can you just say what you're thinking so that we can get this going and see how we can move forward. Yeah.
I like how you're doing that, because in every like business, even the one that I'm working for, there has to be someone pushing for that clear communication to say, what did you mean by, or like, are you thinking about something else? And I just find that like you are very astute, like very sensitive about that. And that I find that very interesting, because you know, where do you think you picked that up from? Like, did you pick that up from somewhere, or did you think that maybe you learned it when you were younger, or was it like much later in life?
So for me, that idea of picking up like communication, active listening, and that innate alertness, I guess, has to
Yeah.
do with like like my past when I was younger. Like everybody has their own story of their childhood, but mine, I I lived with bullying for quite a number of years. Like I didn't really have like a good primary school experience. My secondary school experience wasn't any much better. Uh, it was quite terrible. But I think it has, of course, it has made me who I am today. And part of that is because when you're introverted and you are being picked on, you tend to listen a lot. You don't really talk. You don't lash out. You just listen to what's going on. You start to observe people. You start to observe things, and that's when it comes into like even something as simple as how do two people communicate. You can see that, oh, maybe like the conversation starts out normal. One person says something, the other person gets triggered, so you start to see that everything moves in a pattern, and that also
Wow.
like it also changes when you start looking at things as patterns, and how like people always say that, oh, I'm so um, I'm so easy to read, or like that person is so unpredictable. But in reality, even in someone's unpredictability, there is still a predictability. You can still tell that even when someone's, let's say, their emotional um, flow goes up and down and up and down, there are still ups and downs where you can tell. So
You
it's
can sort of sort of
yeah,
predict it. Like,
yeah,
actually, this is getting like pretty deep and very interesting. I'm just like, I always like to ask about like past and how that shapes. So it's really interesting to me that you were able to turn like a struggle into like a strength much later on, and actually really is helping you to 2x 4x your business in that sense.
yeah.
My then follow-up question would be, do you think that people who struggle in their childhood have like a better chance of like succeeding in like business?
Uh, that is a very difficult question to answer because uh, there are so many ways that something like that can go. Like first of all, you would think that okay, a question like that would lead to either a yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the yes or no, you can see that there are various levels of yeses and nos. Like if you're
Okay.
looking at someone that came from a broken, let's say, just to put out a hypothetical situation, someone that came from a broken family, didn't have a lot of money growing up, had to live a struggled life. Let's just go to extreme: abusive parents, horrible childhood, uh, neglected from family, had no friends. Someone like that could easily go down the path of self-pity, degrading themselves, a lot of issues with your own image, that kind of thing, and then make terrible life choices and not feel the brunt of it because they believe that their existence may be a mistake or whatever. That is the extreme.
Yep.
But then you also have the people that take the situation and say, I never want to be like that. I never want my children to be like that. I'm going to make my life better. So it's a personal choice. So like when people ask like, do I empathize with people that are in worse situations when they grow up? I say yes, I can empathize that these things on their own are hard, but it's hard to say whether it is by their own fault or it was really that
Circumstances.
yeah
Yeah.
the deck the hand of cards that they were dealt. But
John, I like this guest a lot, John. He's a very deep thinker.
Yes.
You are a very deep thinker.
That's why I always wanted Kevin to be on the show.
thank you.
Freaking good. That was
Yeah.
really good. So then, you know, just to ask a little bit more, then you said it was about like choice. You think it's about choice. So when did you make that choice to say, okay, I'm not going to be a victim here. I'm going to turn this around?
I think it came in like end of secondary school. Because throughout secondary school, I think like the number of friends that I could count on were like far and in between, and most of them weren't even in school. So like the people that I face the most aren't the people that I can count on. And like other people will say that, oh, you know, I still meet up with my secondary school friends and stuff like that. I do with like one of them, but that's about it. And the thing is, he wasn't even in the same class as me. Like he was in another class. I just knew him because we were in the same class in Sec 1. But you know, so I think it was at the end of Sec 4 when I realized that all these things in my life, like how I was being treated by other people, the teachers that I had, all the circumstances in my life at the time had actually led me down a path of self-pity. It made it very hard for me to want to study, to focus, and that of course affected my grades. So it led me down a path of like to private institutions to get my diploma. And I think at that point was when I started to really understand, like, if I don't take my life into my own hands now, like if I don't make the decision to not let the things in my life affect me as much, then I can do something about it. You know, it of course it's not easy. You know, everybody will say it's hard, and of course it's hard. It's just, are you willing to work through it or not? If you are, then you can. Yeah, if you are,
like
then
how much you want it, or it's really
exactly.
how much you want it. Yeah.
If you don't want it, sure, go and do something else. You know, you can wallow pity. You can go and drink, do drugs, whatever. You know, that's not good. But if it's your choice, you know, I can't say anything about it because it's your choice. But if you want to do something about it, go and do something about it. Get educated, start to learn, start to think. You know, you have a brain, use it. You know, so yeah, that was when it changed quite a bit.
So how has your life? I mean, a lot of your experiences are experiences that I've shared. Very similar, not exactly, but you know, many points. So it resonated a lot. You know, and I think we're always talking about
business,
you know?
brand.
So I'm not gonna go there. Hey, Kevin, during a business meeting, would you tell me more about your life story?
But like also, it resonates with me because like my primary, secondary school not great. It was only later in the tertiary years. So
I got bullied like hell also when I was in school. Yeah, but how do you think these experiences of yours, how is it shaping the way that you view leadership and how you are trying to take the company forward? What are those lessons that you've applied?
Everybody has a story, but not everybody has a story that they want to tell, but not everybody is willing to listen to that story. And I think part of what I want to do as, you know, the next generation leader is to make that important, because it doesn't only talk about how you run business or how, you know, the working culture is going to be. It talks on a more personal level about people, not just about yourself, your colleagues, your employees, but even people like your customers, your clients. Yeah, and especially not just them, but your personal relationships with the people around you. You know, it's that ability to want to listen to people and want to understand them that I think will give you the upper hand, because then you will understand people's perspectives. You understand what their goals are. You understand even what their motivations can be from the back end, whether it was like a bad childhood or, you know, a dream or something that they really want. Then you will start to see how they fit into plans, and you will start to see how you can fit into their plans as well. So yeah.
This is very new generation kind of leadership, right? This is the stuff that John and I talk about all the time, like knowing who you work with, understanding what their motivations are, where they fit into the organization, and then actually encouraging them to do it and engage with you on a very different level from what my parents experienced as employees of India. I just find that, like, do you think that as time goes by and more of this kind of leadership comes up, we're going to see sort of a shift from a competitive kind of industry to a little bit more of a co-opting each other, connecting with each other, cooperating kind of a situation?
I think it's possible. It's possible for that to happen, but of course, you will have, I would say, a majority of people, even if, let's say, their values are to listen, to want to work with people, they will also still start to maintain that competitive nature as businesses are. And I think it will be very difficult, but of course it would be something that I would want to see. Networks forming around the world, each person helping each other, that would be great. But I think because of where things are now, it's still highly unlikely, at least for the next like 30 to 50 years. Because if you're looking at how the newer generation is actually coming up now, it's actually moving towards more of a competitive nature. Even if, let's say, like you hear what I'm talking about right now, I want to be I want to connect with people on a personal level, but that may not necessarily change someone else's outlook on business.
Understand.
I think it's against the so-called convention of what people would normally expect. I want to say our generation, but I don't know whether that is the correct way to put it. But okay, just for the sake of it, our generation would think, because people always believe that everyone is striving very hard, to have this cooperation thing. But it's very interesting that you point out that people have actually become much more competitive. And
Yeah.
I'm also wondering whether it's because that resources now are even more scarce, and even now after post-COVID, it's different.
Things are getting tighter.
World. Yeah, and how would the face of business change? And we know that, I think, to secure the future of the world, a lot more cooperation has to be done. But at the same time, now everyone is fighting even more for what's already at the table.
Yeah. If you look at how society is now, and maybe it will trend on for the next 10, 20 years, you're looking at people that at face value want to have cooperation, but in reality, you still see that the nature of competitiveness is still very much burning in them. Like, even if let's say you talk about cooperation amongst firms, there is a level of that, but you're talking about, like, as if in a social context, it's a clique, a group of very powerful people sticking together, and that's how it works. But then let's just take the GE for example. Like, not to throw any political views or whatever, I'm not going to mention any parties, but if you look at just yeah, I said I'm not going to mention any parties at all, but I'll just take a look at the situation in general. You see so many people fighting for cooperation, one Singapore united, but that is what you would consider as face value, because right after that there will be instances where in their hearts they would feel, okay, I'll put myself in it as well so that we can make it very cohesive, no one can point any fingers, that we will start to feel, yeah, that party is doing this party is doing this. Then you start to form a divide in your own heart. So how can you possibly tell openly that you want a united Singapore if you yourself cannot accept unity amongst differences? So instead of what I would be thinking in my head is, instead of looking outwardly towards unity, you should start looking at unity within yourselves first. How are you going to unify amongst the people in your immediate circle, instead of trying to unify a whole country that honestly you don't really have much of a say in, unless your
I think
parliamentary.
there's a very, very interesting thing, because I think the very concept of unity is often misunderstood in many ways, because like what you said, everyone is so concerned about, oh, let's unite the country, but what are you even doing in your own backyard? Okay, we don't have backyards in Singapore, but within your HDB block or whatever, what are you doing, and
Exactly.
how are you as a person reacting to certain things? Because unity also means that you are willing to accept every person for their views. Then there
Yes.
comes in also the big question of, what are the gray areas that we can agree up
Yeah.
to, and what is accepted by society, but what again is decided by society is again up
Friend.
for
Exactly.
discussion.
Up for
But
debate.
so it's a never ending
Yes.
circle at the same
It's
time.
there
never
is
ending.
this there was this discussion I was having with my wife, right? And I think at the end of the day, right, like the words are the same, but the definition is completely different. Which is
Yes.
what John was saying, right?
Yeah.
Because like
So
we were saying, okay, actually everyone wants stability. But what your parents, what the kind of stability your parents want and the kind of stability you want, you're talking about
Yes.
different things
very
altogether.
different things.
And
So that's
how
why
to get there also.
Exactly. So like that's why it is unity, but on my terms.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
society in a nutshell. I want it on my terms. Only if it's the way that it's going to be what exactly I want, then you can have it.
Yeah.
And that's the divide already. Because people find it so hard to let someone else take control.
Yeah.
Because they fear that they will not get exactly what they want.
And it's really interesting you said that, because what you're saying is that, like, what you're actually alluding to is that there are a lot of people that actually lack the self-awareness to even arrive at that point, that to say, actually, what I want is on my terms, and actually what you want is on your terms, but we can try to understand each other, but we don't want to because we just want it our way.
Yes.
It's 100%. And I think when you bring it into, like, that's why alignment in a company is so important, because you may want the same thing as me, but to get there is a completely different story.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, if you want to talk, I will not mention also the name of this country, but it's the same thing when we talk about freedom of expression, freedom of
liberty,
not to wear my mask.
Yeah, So the thing is that where it could be freedom for you, but your choice, affects another person's freedom.
Yeah.
So then again, so what exactly is this unity and freedom at the end of the day? If you, based on or what you see as your right, your inalienable right, that you alienate other people in the process.
And some people believe that if you infringe on my freedom, right, by not wearing a mask, you are actually, by not wearing a mask, you're infringing on my freedom, and you're doing bad shit to me.
That's why I always tell people, that as the new generation of business leaders come about, the business actually becomes more complicated, because the staff that come on board will be much more at a higher level of awareness and not as ready to take shit as perhaps our parents' generation, where okay, law, no choice, you just got to do it. But here is where we have to exercise a lot of understanding, to be absolutely open to dialogue and communication. And what Kevin says a lot is really in the minds of a new crop, a new generation of leaders. And for me, sometimes when, like for me, I'm always very concerned about how the mood of the expression of people. How do I want to go about this better? Did I say something to upset people? Become very, very sensitive, because this is how society is actually right now, and people don't understand. And even like for the older generation of bosses, when dealing with so-called our generation, I just put myself nicely in the 20-something category for a while.
They struggle
because they are unable to have this. Because I even heard one boss say, right, then I was like, oh, your people are going back to the office, isn't it? Shouldn't we be like by default working from home? And he was like, no, I heard a lot of my friends saying they are going back to work. Then I'm like, oh. Then the next thing he said was, like that, if not happy, then can go and find another job.
And the thing is that these bosses don't understand that when you have the attitude, you're leaking talent. And you're leaking talent on a scale which you don't understand.
Right.
You know? It's not just one, it's multiple. And they won't tell you why they left. During the exit interview, which by the way is completely useless because the person has already decided to leave. During the exit interview,
I will never tell you the truth.
staff will tell you the truth. They will say, oh, I got a better opportunity. Or like they're not gonna say like you were a shitty boss, fuck you. They weren't gonna say that, And I just think that like, especially as the age gap gets bigger, the one of the things that I'm very terrified about is I become the thing that I don't want to be. So I constantly have to remind myself, okay, you have to be open dialogue. You cannot shut people down ahead of time. You have to listen. You have to like connect. You have to ask questions. Like, don't like make statements. Like, it can be. I mean, if it's difficult for us, I mean, the 60-year-old sitting at the top, it must be like hell for them sitting in that position and not being able to tell people, do this, do that anymore, because they're so used to it for the past, 40 years, Yeah, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, it was quite interesting because like you're talking a lot about your awareness, and I think there's actually quite it is true that the newer generation of individuals now, maybe like in between the teens to like the 20s and 30s, there is a heightened level of awareness. But I think in awareness itself, there are multiple layers. You're talking about external, internal awareness, and even in those areas of awareness, you have like various little aspects that people may or may not pay more attention to. So like everybody is biased in some sense or another. That is already a given. But how does having enough internal awareness to know how your bias affects your thought? I think that is something that is still not very prevalent in the newer generation, because like you can see how like the older generation will talk about how the newer generation are too picky.
Yep.
Which
or like selfish,
Yeah.
I've been labeled selfish before.
Exactly. So because it's a generalization of an entire generation, which in my opinion, as someone from the younger generation, I think it is true, because I do see that the younger generation have become a lot more picky. They are more, they can be more aware of a situation or condition. Yes, sure, but that does not make their awareness justifying of their actions later when, let's say, they start and go and fight someone, start arguing about a taboo topic or whatever. It does not make it easier for them, because it makes it worse when they don't understand how that awareness of that situation that they are arguing for is affected by their internal bias of their perception of that situation. And then
it's almost like the awareness of the external overwhelms the awareness of the internal self.
Yes.
And then they're unable to sync it up.
Yeah, and it becomes worse, because then they will start to add things in from their own bias into that situation, and then they fight for something that isn't even already there. Like people talk about violence and stuff like that. Yes, violence is bad, but violence is bad in all contexts. But if you keep arguing about one violence over the other violence, you lose sight of what your original focus is, which is you just don't want to have violence. But you keep nitpicking at little things over the
my violence is more important than your violence, because and then like a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Exactly. So like the whole idea, like we're going back to just now, like the unity on my terms, because you want to fight for something good, but you're doing it on your terms, and then it becomes something bad.
Yes.
So that's how I see the newer generation are being let loose into the world to freely think. It may not also be for their own good, because you've basically unleashed a whole bunch of opinionated people into the world that don't know how to control their tongue. And then one person triggers one, and that person triggers another, and then you have this whole network of trigger you can't stop.
I was 18, and when I was 25, I was remarkably opinionated. I think you know me from like when I was like 25, 26. I was remarkably opinionated.
Yes, you
Just
should
that,
meet.
like,
You should meet Kenneth at the time.
yeah, and I would be willing to go back and forth with you.
Yeah,
But
same.
the thing
I
is
think
that
we're all like that. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that is just that is amplified because they have friends now
Mm.
that they never meet in real life, but they
Yeah.
can text each other and tweet each other and
Mm.
retweet each other. And I think that's like ultra amplified now. But like,
Right.
Yeah.
it's to his credit, at least he believes in something.
Yeah. Of course, but I
Yeah.
still believe, like for me, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
That
It's like
absolutely. Yeah.
some restraint as
Yes.
yeah.
But I think the
as you
restraint
go along,
comes with experience, different life experience. Because Kevin also, I mean, I don't really like to talk about age and all that, but Kevin is still rather young guy. We probably outaged him by 2 digits already. I think so. Yeah, about there, So,
but his life experience
the life experiences,
has
yes,
given him that understanding.
correct.
Yeah, so
Correct.
it's gonna take time, and
Yeah.
I hope that as we go along with like the 18-year-old and the 20, like as they go along, they are able to synthesize that energy, that like resistance, right, that strength into some kind of strength.
Yes.
Yeah, I think especially with the younger generation growing up, like of course, yes, at 18 when you're just in your teens, you just want to fight everybody. Like you just want your opinions to be heard. You want to live in the world that everyone's talking about.
Right.
The heat is there.
Yeah. So like in order for what I would think the newer generation of leaders, like what would help, especially is in the developing stages of each person's life, is that they start to have people to walk with them. So because like people always say that, as the generations go by, people start to mature at earlier ages. And I think that is true to some extent. Yes, there are more and more people that are maturing earlier, but you have a larger generation of people that still remain immature and to a larger extent for a much longer period of time. Because when you start to change minds at an early age, sometimes the mind gets stuck and doesn't want to move, and it stays for a very, very long time. That goes to all generations, but
right.
Yeah, especially now in this era where the previous generation or the current generation of parents are starting to become like the opinionated ones, and how that translates into their kids. I think out of all the external circumstances in the world, people should start looking at the things that are inside them. What about them can they continue to grow? What about them can they change? People always say that, I shouldn't change, I'm the best, that kind of thing. Well, in reality, the world does not revolve around you. You need to learn how to work with people. You need to learn how to live in a world that involves other people.
Yes.
So you can't make the world about you. You need to learn to know how to live amongst people. And I think that is all part of like personal growth, which I am a very strong advocate on, that people should continue to better themselves and not just remain stagnant just because they think they know better.
Wow. That's perfect.
That's
I think,
that's
today's episode is full of very, very deep thoughts.
Cool.
Thanks so much, Kevin, for
Thank you,
being on the
Kevin.
show. Definitely a fantastic show. And anyway, Kenneth, you do the honors about the liking and the subscribing.
So if you have fun, you enjoy the Kevin's thoughts, you enjoy everything that we talked about, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and remember to ring the bell for notifications.